Hello and welcome. My name is Esther, and before we go any further, I want to be clear. I am an AI-generated avatar. I was created to support this presentation, not to replace human expertise, judgment, or teaching. That choice is intentional. Today's session is called Transforming AI Policies, from Compliance to Critical Literacy, and my presence here models one of the core ideas we'll explore: transparency, purpose, and human-centered use of AI. Too often, conversations about AI in higher education focus only on rules, what's allowed, what's prohibited, and how to enforce compliance. Those questions matter, but they are only the beginning. What we truly need is critical AI literacy, an approach that helps faculty and students understand how AI works, evaluate its outputs, consider ethical implications, and apply it thoughtfully within their disciplines. In this presentation, you'll see how we can move from static policy language toward AI agreements that support learning, judgment, and human agency, both in our syllabi and in our classrooms. As AI tools like ChatGPT, Claude, and Gemini become more common in our classrooms, they are changing not only how students work, but how we think about authorship, learning, and academic integrity. Whether we've formally addressed AI in our syllabi or not, it is already part of the learning environment. And that leaves many of us asking some of the same questions. What should I say in my syllabus, and how do I set clear expectations without oversimplifying something this complex? If AI is already shaping how students generate ideas, draft work, and solve problems, how do I avoid policies that are either so restrictive they're unrealistic or so vague they're meaningless? How do I create language that supports learning, critical thinking, and ethical decision-making, rather than just compliance? In this presentation, I'll take a quick look at K-State's sample AI policy language. These guidelines provide important guardrails and institutional support, and they give faculty a starting point for setting expectations around academic integrity and transparency. Next, I'll talk about where policy language alone tends to fall short. While compliance matters, policies don't always help students develop the judgment, critical thinking, and ethical reasoning that AI now requires of them. That leads into the core of this session: critical AI literacy. I'll introduce the Digital Education Council's AI literacy framework and its 5 domains, which help us think beyond allowed or prohibited toward deeper learning, human agency, and discipline-specific use. This extends our thinking beyond just policies into agreements. Building on that foundation, I'll share key ideas from AI policy templates for teachers by Dr. Kharbach and explain how shifting from rigid policies to flexible AI agreements can better support both teaching and learning. Then I'll show what this looks like in practice, both in everyday classroom conversations, assignments, and feedback, and in syllabus language that is transparent, adaptable, and learning-centered. The goal is for you to leave with a clearer way to think about AI in your courses, and a few practical ideas you can adapt right away. The sample AI syllabus language provided by K-State offers faculty 3 broad approaches to AI use in courses, each aligned with academic integrity expectations and the Honor Pledge. First, AI prohibited statements make clear that coursework is expected to be completed entirely by the student. AI tools are treated similarly to having another person complete the work. The emphasis is on originality, creativity, and personal reflection. Any AI use must be fully cited, and undisclosed AI-generated content is considered a violation of academic integrity. Second, AI-permitted statements allow limited AI use to support learning, such as idea generation or grammar assistance, while prohibiting AI from fully producing assignments. These versions emphasize transparency and student responsibility. In some cases, students are required to include a detailed AI acknowledgement explaining how and why AI was used, what was edited or revised, and what limitations or biases were identified. Finally, AI-required statements position AI as an intentional part of the learning process. Students are expected to engage with AI tools ethically and transparently, sometimes as part of developing professional or disciplinary skills. Some versions include co-creating a class agreement early in the semester to clarify expectations, while still grounding AI use in university academic integrity policies. Across all versions, the shared emphasis is on citation, transparency, and alignment with the Honor Pledge, providing clear compliance guidance while leaving pedagogical decisions to individual instructors. Policy language matters. It gives us clarity, consistency, and an important foundation for academic integrity. Critical AI literacy requires more than knowing whether a tool is allowed or prohibited. It requires students to evaluate AI output, to question accuracy, notice gaps, recognize bias, and understand that AI responses are not neutral or authoritative. It also requires ethical decision-making. Students need to think about attribution, transparency, data privacy, and the consequences of how AI is used, not just whether it helps them complete a task more quickly. And finally, it requires disciplinary judgment. What counts as appropriate AI use looks different in different fields. Students need guidance in learning how AI fits, or doesn't fit, within the norms, methods, and values of their discipline. When our guidance stops at policy, students may learn the rules, but they don't necessarily learn these skills. That's the gap I want to explore next. How we move from managing AI use to teaching students how to think with AI responsibly, ethically, and within their disciplinary context. To move beyond compliance, we need a shared way to think about what AI literacy actually means. One helpful model comes from the Digital Education Council, which developed the AI Literacy Framework specifically for higher education. This framework reminds us that critical AI literacy isn't just about knowing whether AI is allowed. It's about developing the knowledge, judgment, and human-centered skills students need to engage with AI thoughtfully, both in our courses and beyond them. Together, these 5 domains help us ask better questions, not just, can students use AI, but do they understand how AI works and where it can go wrong? Can they evaluate AI output instead of accepting it at face value? Are they making ethical choices about data, bias, and attribution? Are they keeping human judgment, creativity, and responsibility at the center? And can they apply AI appropriately within their specific discipline? This is where policy language alone reaches its limits, and where teaching for critical AI literacy begins. Traditional syllabus policies tend to focus almost entirely on Domain 3, ethics and integrity. They emphasize citation, attribution, and academic honesty, what counts as misuse, and what consequences follow when boundaries are crossed. Those guardrails are important, and they serve a real purpose. But when ethics and integrity are the only domains addressed, students may come to see AI primarily as a risk to manage, rather than a tool to evaluate, question, and use thoughtfully. The focus stays on compliance, on avoiding violations, rather than on developing the judgment and understanding that responsible AI use actually requires. If we stop there at policy and rules, we risk teaching students how to avoid getting in trouble, rather than how to engage responsibly with AI. They learn what not to do without learning how to think critically, ethically, and creatively with these tools. And that gap matters. This is where agreements become powerful. Dr. Kharbach argues that as AI becomes more embedded in learning, we need to shift away from rigid, top-down policies and toward AI use agreements. Unlike policies, agreements are not static documents designed primarily to enforce rules. They are shared, evolving understandings between instructors and students, built around learning goals, transparency, and ethical judgment rather than fear of punishment. In this approach, AI expectations are not just announced, they are explained. Students are invited to understand why certain uses are appropriate, when AI supports learning, and where human thinking must remain central. Misuse becomes an opportunity for reflection and revision before it becomes a disciplinary issue. Most importantly, AI agreements acknowledge that AI tools, assignments, and disciplinary norms will continue to change. Rather than pretending we can lock everything down in advance, agreements create space for conversation, adjustment, and shared responsibility, while still honoring academic integrity. This shift doesn't weaken standards. It strengthens them by helping students develop the judgment they will need long after they leave our classrooms. When instructors begin developing an AI agreement, Dr. Kharbach encourages them to start not with the technology, but with the course itself. The first question is purpose. Why might AI belong in this course, or why might it not? Where could AI genuinely support learning? And where would it interfere with essential thinking, practice, or assessment? An effective agreement makes that reasoning visible so students understand the why behind the expectations. Next comes clarity about boundaries. Students need to know when and how AI may be used and when it may not. That clarity often looks like concrete examples. Brainstorming versus final analysis, drafting versus reflection, rather than broad or vague permissions. Transparency is also central. Instead of trying to detect AI use, agreements ask students to explain it. What tool did they use? How did it support their work? What did they revise, reject, or verify? These moments of disclosure are opportunities for learning, not confession. Developing an agreement also means thinking about judgment. How will students learn to evaluate AI output rather than accept it at face value? How will they check accuracy, recognize bias, and understand the limits of what AI can do? The agreement should reinforce that responsibility always rests with the student. Ethics, privacy, and equity matter as well. Instructors may want to address data privacy, ethical risks specific to their discipline, and differences in student access to AI tools. Naming these considerations signals that AI use is not just technical, it's human and contextual. Finally, Kharbach emphasizes flexibility. AI agreements are not meant to be locked in forever. They can be revisited, revised, and refined as assignments change, tools evolve, and understanding deepens. Misuse, when it happens, is addressed first as a learning conversation, focused on reflection and revision before it becomes a disciplinary issue. Taken together, these considerations shift the role of the syllabus. Instead of simply listing rules, it becomes a space where students learn how to think responsibly, ethically, and critically with AI, skills they will need far beyond a single course. In his AI agreement templates, Dr. Kharbach offers faculty a practical way to translate big ideas about AI into something students can actually understand and use. The template begins by naming the purpose of AI in the course. Rather than starting with restrictions, it starts with intent. It explains how AI may support learning, such as helping students brainstorm, organize ideas, or move forward when they feel stuck, while making clear that AI does not replace thinking, judgment, or original work. This opening frames AI as a learning tool, not a shortcut. Next, the template identifies the tools that might be used, with the understanding that this list can change. This signals flexibility and reinforces that AI use is contextual and evolving, not fixed once and for all. A central part of the template clarifies what is okay and what is not. Instead of dense policy language, Kharbach uses simple categories and examples to show different levels of AI use, from light support like grammar or summaries, to brainstorming and planning, to clearly unacceptable uses, such as submitting work fully written by AI. This helps students make distinctions, rather than guess where the line is. Transparency is built directly into the template. Students are asked to share how they used AI, which tool they used, what they asked it to do, what they kept or changed, and how they checked the information. This shifts AI use from something hidden to something examined, making process visible and discussable. The template also explicitly addresses privacy and safety, reminding students not to share personal or sensitive information and to use approved platforms. Alongside this is a commitment to equity and access, acknowledging that not all students have the same tools and that alternatives should be available. When things go wrong, the template emphasizes a learning-first response. The expectation is conversation, reflection, and revision before formal consequences. Unless misuse is repeated, this reinforces accountability without immediately resorting to punishment. Finally, the template includes a commitment to review and revisit the agreement. It reminds students that AI tools and norms change, and that the agreement itself can be adjusted as the course unfolds. Taken together, this template models exactly what critical AI literacy looks like in practice. It doesn't just tell students what to do, it helps them understand why expectations exist, how to make good decisions, and how to take responsibility for their learning in an AI-rich environment. What's powerful about Dr. Kharbach's AI agreement template is that it doesn't just manage AI use, it actively builds critical AI literacy. And when we look closely, each part of the template aligns directly with the 5 domains of the Digital Education Council AI Literacy Framework. The template begins with purpose, explaining why AI may be used in the course and what role it plays in learning. This directly supports Domain 1, understanding AI and data. Students are not just told that AI exists, they are helped to understand what AI can do, what it cannot do, and how it fits into academic work. The section that clarifies what is okay and what is not, often using concrete examples or simple categories, supports Domain 2, critical thinking and judgment. Rather than guessing at boundaries, students learn to evaluate different kinds of AI use and make reasoned decisions about when AI supports learning and when it undermines it. The template's emphasis on transparency, asking students to explain how they used AI, what they changed, and how they checked accuracy, connects strongly to Domain 3:30, ethical and responsible AI use. disclosure becomes a normal academic practice, reinforcing accountability, integrity, and awareness of bias and misinformation. Kharbach's focus on learning first responses, reflection, and revision speaks directly to domain Fordham-Main, human centricity, emotional intelligence, and creativity. The agreement keeps human judgment at the center. AI is treated as a tool that supports thinking, not something that replaces empathy, creativity, or responsibility. Finally, the flexibility built into the template, acknowledging that tools, assignments, and norms will change, aligns with Domain 530's domain expertise. AI use is understood as contextual and discipline-specific. Students learn that responsible AI use looks different across fields and that professional judgment matters. Taken together, Kharbach's template shows us that AI agreements are not just administrative documents. They are instructional tools. They operationalize critical AI literacy by weaving all 5 DEC domains into everyday classroom expectations, making AI literacy something students practice, not just something we talk about. When AI agreements move off the syllabus and into the classroom, they show up less as rules to enforce and more as practices we model and revisit together. In classroom practice, this often begins with modeling. Instructors make their own thinking visible, showing how AI might be used as a starting point, how outputs are questioned or revised, and how human judgment remains central. When faculty are transparent about their own use, it signals to students that AI is something to think with, not something to hide. Assignments also play a key role. Rather than focusing only on final products, assignments invite students to explain their process, how AI may have supported brainstorming, drafting, or revision, and where they made decisions themselves. Reflection becomes part of the learning, not an add-on. In this approach, transparency is normalized. Students are encouraged to disclose AI use openly, without fear, and those disclosures become opportunities for conversation rather than detection. The focus shifts from, did you use AI, to how did you use it and why? Feedback and revision matter here as well. When AI use is incomplete, unclear, or poorly judged, instructors respond with guidance, helping students refine their thinking, verify information, and strengthen their work. Missteps become moments for learning rather than immediate discipline. Classroom conversations reinforce this mindset. Discussions focus on choices, trade-offs, and judgment, when AI helped, when it didn't, and what that tells us about the task, the tool, and the discipline. And finally, the agreement itself stays visible. Expectations can be revisited after major assignments or as tools evolve, reminding students that responsible AI use is an ongoing practice, not a one-time rule. This is how critical AI literacy takes shape. Not just in what we say on the syllabus, but in how we teach, respond, and model thoughtful engagement with AI throughout the course. When the ideas behind critical AI literacy and AI agreements are translated into a syllabus, the shift is subtle but important. Instead of starting with a list of rules, the syllabus begins by explaining the purpose of AI in the course. It names why AI might be used, to support brainstorming, organization, practice, or revision, and just as clearly, what it cannot replace. This helps students understand what AI is capable of and where its limits are, building their foundational understanding of how AI works and why it's being included at all. The syllabus then clarifies when and how AI may support learning, rather than a single blanket statement. It distinguishes between different stages of work or types of assignments. Students learn that AI might help generate ideas or refine drafts, but that analysis, interpretation, and reflection remain human responsibilities. This encourages students to exercise judgment instead of guessing where the line is. The syllabus draws a clear line between what AI can help with and what students are responsible for thinking through themselves, making it explicit that while AI may support parts of the process, the core intellectual work, analysis, interpretation, reflection, and decision-making must be done by the student. Transparency is made explicit. The syllabus explains that when AI is used, students are expected to say so, and to briefly explain how it supported their work, what they changed or rejected, and how they checked accuracy. This frames disclosure as a normal academic practice, reinforcing ethical and responsible use rather than fear of being caught. It emphasizes revision, verification, and decision-making, reminding students that AI output is not authoritative and that responsibility for the work always rests with them. This signals that learning is about thinking, not just producing an acceptable product. Importantly, The syllabus acknowledges that AI tools and norms are evolving. It notes that expectations may be revisited during the course as assignments change or as new questions arise. This flexibility reflects disciplinary expertise, recognizing that responsible AI use looks different across fields and contexts. Taken together, this kind of syllabus language does more than manage AI use. It teaches students how to engage with AI thoughtfully, ethically, and critically. It turns the syllabus into a guide for learning with AI, not just a set of rules to follow. Let me show you what this can actually sound like in a syllabus. As an example, an instructor might state that generative AI tools may be used in limited and intentional ways to support learning. Things like brainstorming ideas, organizing thinking, or revising drafts. However, from the beginning, the syllabus draws a clear line between what AI can help with and what students are responsible for thinking through themselves. While AI may support parts of the process, the core intellectual work, analysis, interpretation, reflection, and decision-making remains the student's responsibility. That distinction matters. It helps students understand that AI is a support, not a substitute, and that learning is still centered on their own thinking and judgment. Just as importantly, this isn't treated as a one-time statement buried in the syllabus. It would be important as an instructor to plan to talk through this agreement with early in the course, so students have a chance to ask questions, see examples, and develop a shared understanding of expectations. And as the course unfolds, instructors and students can revisit the agreement as needed because learning, like technology, is not static. When students do use AI, transparency is expected. They should explain how the tool supported their learning and where their own thinking shaped the work. In this way, AI use becomes something that is examined and reflected on together, rather than something students feel they need to hide. Plus, the instructor may choose to have different expectations for different assignments. This approach keeps expectations clear, shared, and human-centered, supporting both academic integrity and meaningful learning. Let me make this concrete with an example at the assignment level. Imagine a course where students are writing an analytical paper. An instructor might explicitly allow students to use AI during the early stages of the assignment to brainstorm possible topics, generate questions, or organize initial ideas. That use is named as acceptable because it supports thinking rather than replaces it. At the same time, the assignment makes clear that the analysis, interpretation of evidence, and final argument must be the student's own. Those elements are what the instructor assesses. As part of the submission, students include a brief disclosure explaining how AI was used, for example, what prompts they tried, what ideas they kept or discarded, and how their own thinking shaped the final paper. The disclosure is short, but it makes the student's decision-making visible. In this way, AI becomes part of the learning process, not something hidden or policed. The instructor evaluates the quality of the student's thinking, not the sophistication of the tool, and students learn how to use AI responsibly within clear boundaries. As you think about what comes next, it may help to remember that progress here doesn't require a complete overhaul. Small steps matter. A small step might be revising a single paragraph in your syllabus or adjusting one assignment to make expectations around AI use more visible. It might mean pausing to examine your own assumptions about AI, what you're comfortable with, what concerns you, and where your discipline draws its lines. This work isn't about getting it perfect. It's about paying attention, asking questions, and making intentional choices. As AI tools continue to change, so will our understanding of how they fit into learning. That's not a failure of policy, it's a reality of teaching. By starting small, reflecting on your own practice, and remaining open to revision, you create space for growth, for yourself, and for your students. And over time, those small, thoughtful steps add up to something much larger. Classrooms where judgment, integrity, and human thinking remain at the center. As we close, I want to return to where we started. AI isn't just a policy issue. It's a teaching and learning issue. When we rely on policy language alone, we manage behavior, but we miss the opportunity to teach students how to evaluate AI output, make ethical choices, and apply judgment within their disciplines. That's where critical AI literacy comes in. By shifting from static policies to AI agreements, we don't lower standards, we clarify them. We make expectations visible, explainable, and grounded in learning. We move from enforcement to education, from fear to responsibility, and from rigid rules to shared understanding. When these agreements show up in syllabi, assignments, and classroom practice, they help students see AI as a tool to think with, not a shortcut to think for them. And they keep what matters most: human judgment, creativity, and responsibility at the center of our courses. You don't need a single perfect statement. You don't need to allow AI everywhere. What matters is intentionality, being clear about where AI supports learning in your course, where it doesn't, and why. That's how we move from compliance to critical literacy, and how we prepare students not just to follow rules, but to think responsibly in an AI-rich world. Thank you for your time and for the thoughtful work you do with students every day. As you continue navigating AI in your teaching, your judgment and care matter more than any single tool or policy. I hope today's ideas offer a framework you can adapt, one that supports learning, preserves human agency, and helps students develop critical judgment. The resources that inform this presentation are listed here if you'd like to explore them further. Thank you again for the work you do and for your commitment to thoughtful, ethical teaching.